so you're going to be rude. No, I am with us.
Okay.
No, she's texting. I am not texting.
As part of these discussions,
I'm recording.
It's being recorded right there, Pam. You can get a copy of the recording. That's why I'm speaking directly into the mic. Will that be okay? In December of 2013, the council started reviewing and discussing the plan. As part of these discussions, Providence was asked what were their long-term plan is. In effect, where do they see themselves in 3 to 5 years, and what is their plan to address their weakening financial situation? At the town retreat in February of 2014, the council looked at an analysis to see if the financial issues surrounding Providence would be resolved as the town grew to its full potential. They do not. At that time, the council again asked Providence about their long-term strategic plan. What were their expectations and solutions to the shrinking territory and revenue from Mecklenburg County? The same can we grow out of this problem analysis, let's look at again at the February 2015 retreat. The outcome was the same. At the January 2015 council meeting, to help with the cash flow problems and a declining fund balance, Providence requested fire service payments from the town to be paid quarterly in advance. And I believe at one time in the past we used to do that before we went monthly. This has been implemented. At our February retreat, Providence requested a flat budget for fiscal year 2015-16, as did the other VFDs. However, Providence's flat budget request results in a $71,000 deficit. With a projected $71,000 budget deficit, their funds will be exhausted before the end of the fiscal year and will be unable to meet financial obligations and its service obligations to the town under the current agreement. This does not include the additional town spending for fire trucks for the fire station. As previously mentioned, the town has historically provided additional funding and support to Providence requests. These continued increases are not sustainable by the town, not warranted by the nature of the services that Providence provides, and not a judicious use of the town's limited resources. Over this same time, a series of meetings with Providence, Wesley Chapel, and other stakeholders have been held. Approximately 30 or more meetings. In anticipation of Providence's financial problems, the council has encouraged them to find solutions, including a potential consolidation with Wesley Chapel. Providence has rejected this approach and, as far as I am aware, has not identified other ways to improve their financial health. While the town cannot require Providence to merge, we are also not required to meet their increased funding demands or subject the town residents to a fire protection model that is broken and could soon be insolvent in the long term to jeopardize fire protection service. In April, Providence was sent a letter requesting a detailed documentary evidence of their financial viability. These 2 red binders are the results of that request. However, most of the information contained in these binders is not relevant to the town's request or has been seen by the town council before. I have pulled 9 pages from the hundreds presented. I selected these pages because they are the only ones that address the financial viability. I will speak briefly to these 9 pages and open up things for discussion among the council members. The original retreat budget has been submitted in these documents with approximately $76,000 in expense reductions that Providence thinks fixes the problem and demonstrates their financial viability. There is no discussion of how they will fund the significant cost of purchasing new fire trucks, There is no discussion on how they plan to address the continuing loss of territory and revenue from Mecklenburg County. There is no discussion of where they will be in the next 2 to 3 years. A quick review of their performance to budget this fiscal year, 2014-15, is also quite concerning. While Providence submitted 6 months actual spending to plan, I have updated to reflect the 9 months spending that was in the plan they sent to the town last month. They are already over budget on 4 expense categories and are projected to be over budget on an additional 7 expense categories before this fiscal year is ended. I will now open this up for council discussion. Mike?
I've reviewed the financials that were sent, and basically the only thing I can say is I pretty much concur with what your assessment is in what you just read. So I really have no other further comment than I pretty much concur with the findings.
I continue to hear, can you hear me now? Can y'all hear me in the back? Barely. I continue to hear that Providence Volunteer Fire Department is not financially solvent. Well, of course they aren't if we do not adequately fund them. Fire departments are funded by taxpayer dollars. Every fire department in the country would go broke if the taxpayers took away their funding. We, the taxpayers of Weddington, want to adequately fund them. It's not the town's money, it's the public's money. And what I hear the public saying is, pay them with our money. Pay them. The argument has been made that the town will go broke if we continue funding Providence Volunteer Fire Department. Numbers can dance on a piece of paper any way the author directs them. Let's look at the bigger picture. Weddington's income per capita is the second in the county, third in the state. Let me repeat that. Weddington income per capita is the second in the county and third in the state. We have a population of 10,000 in 17 square mile area. We have a property tax value of approximately $2 billion. In comparison, Wesley Chapel's Volunteer Fire Department district has a tax base of $4 billion with 2 stations and approximate 30 square mile district. That's 2 stations with a $4 billion tax base compared to 1 station with a $2 billion tax base. Providence has a budget of approximately $700,000. Wesley Chapel has a budget of approximately $1.8 million. So who is the most frugal department? Who operates on less? These numbers should clearly alleviate any concerns of funding gap and make it crystal clear that the town can afford to fund the conservative budget we've been presented. If you combine the municipal property tax rate with the corresponding fire district tax rate, Marvin residents pay 7.81 cents. Waxhaw residents pay 37.86 cents. Mineral Springs residents pay 7.33 cents. Wesley Chapel Village residents pay 4.46 cents. Depending on which fire district they are in, Stallings residents pay either 25.78 cents or 26.76 cents. Indian Trail, their residents pay either 21.31, 22.78, or 23.76 cents for their municipal and fire tax. So citizens in the surrounding communities pay an average of 19.76 cents for their town and fire. Weddington citizens pay 5.2 cents. So what about the comments addressing increasing costs? The Providence comes back for more money every year. The average fire tax rate in the county is 4.21 cents. It's been suggested that we paid 3.74 cents for fire service here in Weddington. The average increase for the majority of the fire departments in the county for year 2015 versus 2014 was 20%. That's a 20% increase, 15 over 14, for the majority of the fire departments in the county. That's the average. We have with us tonight Peggy Autry. Peggy, if you're in the audience, would you please stand up? Peggy wanted to speak tonight and share her story that happened Easter Sunday, April the 5th of this year. Her home caught fire and burned completely. Her daughter was burned and had to be airlifted to the burn center in Winston-Salem. She attributes saving her daughter's life to a response time of only 4 minutes. I attribute Providence Volunteer Fire Dept saving her daughter's life to not just the proximity and the response time, but having 4 certified firefighters, of which 2 are EMTs as the first responders. Peggy is asking this council to use her tax dollars to support our local fire department. Thank you, Peggy. So the net of the financial picture clearly shows we have a tax base to support the budget that Providence Volunteer Fire Dept has requested. That level of funding is well below the average in the county and even in the state. That the increases per year are well known to, are well below what other departments have shown. Poor planning on the part of the town should not constitute an emergency for the citizens of Weddington.
I only have a few comments, and I guess I'm going to comment against what Pam said. She said we have a $2 billion asset for one station. Wesley Chapel has 4 for 2 stations, which if you divide 2 into, is 2 PERS. 1.8 for Wesley Chapel is their operating budget. Providence is $700,000. Wesley Chapel pays for, out of their 2.8 cent tax rate, for 2 loans and for their fire department equipment, meaning their trucks. If Providence was so viable, why could they not get a loan on their own? I mean, I've seen a flyer where they have $3 million worth of asset. Why could they not get a collateral loan to pay for their upgrades to their fire department and to pay for a fire truck. That when we created the municipal fire district, I could quote a couple of items in there that were said by the then pro tem mayor, Dan Barry, and our former mayor, Walker Davison, about every 2 years, the citizens have the right to decide on how their fire service was done. Every 2 years.
We're deciding now.
I have the mic right now, please. So, for me, when I look at the numbers, I ask a couple of questions. One, I don't see where Mecklenburg has changed, and yet I do know that last night, the Charlotte Council just approved annexation of another tract of land on McKee Road. 2 months ago, they approved for Waverly 82 acres to go into Charlotte to be annexed. So that's all out of Mecklenburg. I don't see what Union County is going to give Providence. So I look at these numbers, and what I know is, yes, they cut them. And I believe if we continue forward, within 2 months, they'll be asking for more money. When you say poor planning, on whose part? It has never been the town that was in the fire district or fire service until 2012. So I am concerned that if we go forward as is, it's not a 6-cent raise. And I know you say everybody in here is willing to do that, but there are people, I've heard from those people, who do not want their taxes raised. Not everybody in this town had their house assessed lower. There were people that got 7 to 10% increase in their assessment. So that, we'll get the tax money from there. But in the end, we're gonna get 5% less than what we had before. This is not an easy decision, but we have to do what's best, not for just today, but for the future. And I'd like to read some quotes that were said in the February 9th, 2012 council meeting, when at that point we were asked to talk about sending out a letter when we were going to create the municipal fire service. The first thing is, Councilwoman Hadley, we were elected to do the research to make the decision. I think this vote this past November reflected exactly what the majority of the people wanted. I would prefer to have something more in hand like what I took into Williamsburg last fall. I'm all for clarity and transparency, but at some point you can cross that line where you give too much information. Mayor Pro Tem Barry, people elect us to use our common sense and good conscience to make a decision, and sometimes in this republic, in their best interest, it is in their best interest that they do not like it. We are going to have to help this community make some very difficult decisions about fire service. The 5 of us are going to have to make the decision, not the 10,000 people that live in Weddington. I'm not ad-libbing. It is out there on the webpage, and it's on the minutes from February 2012. What I see is that now that there's a difference in what's going on, these 2 people don't want to give all the information and now want the entire 10,000 people to make a decision. Again, I'm looking not only today, but in the future, and I can't see where it's going to be a viable solution for Providence to continue the way they are. Thank you. I'm done there, Bill.
Unless there's any more discussion, I think the action we have at hand, based on the financials here.
Can you hear you, please?
Based on the financials that were submitted here and the ones that I have discussed and the council made some reference to, is we're looking on whether we should continue the FSA with Providence, or should we authorize? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, go ahead.
Or should we authorize the town attorney to take steps to terminate the FSA?
I move to continue the FSA with Providence Volunteer Fire Department and to adequately fund them for the 2015-2016 budget year. Let's look at the conversations we've had with the public. In January, we announced the recommendations of the fire study. To quote the mayor, I see two options presented: raising taxes or see if there's an interest in the fire departments consolidating. Before we go down the road of increasing taxes, let's go down the road of seeing if there's potential to entertain consolidation. Meetings were scheduled to work on the logistics of dissolving the two fire departments and creating a new company. At the council February meeting, council reported the status of these meetings, and Mayor Pro Tem reviewed a chart showing the breakdown of costs for the town, and that we spent 53% of our total revenue for public safety. I reported communication from the North Carolina Department of Insurance that called into question the possible consequences of implementing a consolidation by July 2015. February 25th and 26th special meetings were called to dissolve the municipal district and give back the taxing authority to the county. At our March 9th council meeting, I reiterated what the mayor had stated during public comments at the county commissioners meeting on March 2nd. Number one, that Hemby Road stays open. Number two, there will continue to be 4 certified firemen staffing 24/7, 365. Number 3, there will be no decline of service. And number 4, the state fire marshal and the county emergency services director said there would be no increase in homeowners insurance. Again, I shared yet another letter from the North Carolina State Department of Insurance that clearly communicated consequences that had the possibility of increasing homeowner insurance rates, especially working on a timeline of implementing a change July 2015. It was approved by the council to advertise a letter of commitment signed by the town and Wesley Chapel Volunteer Fire Department. It was not approved to advertise Providence Volunteer Fire Department's proposal that included the 4 areas of agreement, but went on to explain the consequences of not working with the North Carolina Department of Insurance and why a timeline to create a consolidation would better serve the citizens if implemented by July 2016 instead of July 2015. On March 16th, the county commissioners' budget meeting revealed the staff making a recommendation to the commissioners for a countywide tax. At council's April 13th meeting, due to the uncertainty of the county's actions and how that could affect Weddington, council withdrew the resolution sent to the county in February to take back the taxing authority for our fire service. The mayor went on to request a motion to terminate the service contract for Providence Volunteer Fire Department and present a contract to Wesley Chapel Volunteer Fire Department to provide fire service to the entire town of Weddington. And that finds us here today, 15 days after the motion to terminate Providence Volunteer Fire Department and contract with Wesley Chapel Fire Department, making a decision that has not been vetted by the citizens, a decision that has too many uncertainties regarding the primary concerns of the public. Those uncertainties include, but are not limited to, Staffing of 4 certified, 2 of which are EMTs, 24/7, 365, that has been promised by the mayor time and again on public record, emails, and in the media. The contract with Wesley Chapel has no provisions guaranteeing that promise. The mayor even stated at the March council meeting that staffing would be determined by Wesley Chapel Volunteer Fire Department. One would be left only to assume this promise of staffing has now been broken. There will be no decline of service, has also been promised. Tell me how there will be no decline of our current service when staffing is decreased and apparatus is decreased to the levels of a substation requirement. The North Carolina Department of Insurance regulations require response of 2 independent companies. What this means is that 2 Wesley Chapel volunteer stations responding to a fire will not meet those requirements. Our automatic aid will suffer now because we have to go further down the road, increasing response times, and have Waxhaw, Mineral Springs, Bakers, Stallings, and even Hemby Bridge on the stack plan for the first tone or called by 911. The statement, the state fire marshal and the county emergency services director said there would be no increase in homeowners insurance is misleading, certainly not acknowledging the obvious communications with the state, and is simply not the truth. Because this is such a disputed and contentious subject, I'd like to call the 2 experts, the authority in the audience, Davy Summey and Chet Hill, to the podium. Can someone outside ask if Davy Summey and Chet Hill are here?
We're over here.
There you are.
Hey.
Davy Summey is the, I'm sorry, I have the floor.
Yeah.
I have the floor.
You gentlemen stand back.
Davy Summey is the inspection supervisor, and Chet Hill is a fire rating inspector with the Office of the State Fire Marshal. First, would you please explain to the public the process by which...
This isn't a public hearing.
This isn't a public hearing. I'll tell you what, these gentlemen, we got plenty of press here, we got plenty of people. These gentlemen have plenty of time to talk to the press and the people when they want.
Can't hear.
Can't hear you.
These people have plenty of time, these 2 gentlemen here, to talk to the press and the people.
Let them speak.
This is not a public hearing.
You said it, we the people.
It's not a public hearing.
You had
You
any-
have the right to ask questions of expert opinion.
It's not a public hearing.
I'm not saying it's a public hearing.
Please quiet back here, please.
Do I not have the right to substantiate my motion by asking experts questions that might influence my motion?
At this point, the council was soliciting comments from each of the council members. It is a point in time in the meeting where you're allowed to provide comments as a council person. It is not including third-party input into those comments.
I do have additional comments. I would think that over such a disputed and contentious subject, having 2 experts be able to talk to us as a council and the public is a disservice. And I'd like to go on record that it is not acceptable as far as I'm concerned.
Let the experts speak.
I wanted to ask these experts, these gentlemen from the the State Department of Insurance, exactly what the process was so that we could understand the regulations and procedures that they have to adhere to. I'm sorry, once again, the council is unable to let this happen. So does this change have the ability, and what they would explain to you, had they been able to answer, is that there is a process. They come down and they do a survey. It has to be submitted to ISO, and then it comes back for more paperwork. This is not a process where you have a new company or a new fire district come in, you call them, hey Davey, come down next Tuesday and we'll fill out the forms. It doesn't happen that way, and it doesn't happen fast. Hopefully you'll be able to get these questions answered for yourself after the meeting. The other question I was going to ask them was, does this change have the ability to affect citizens in Wesley Chapel District? Those not in Weddington, specifically Marvin, unincorporated Union County, and the village of Wesley Chapel. Per Wayne Goodwin, who is the insurance commissioner and state fire marshal, therefore, if an established fire insurance district or an established fire department serving as the primary or as automatic aid assisting the fire department of a fire district is abolished or undergoes significant alterations, we are limited on what we can do since a major portion of the rating of the ID is based on these. Results of any significant alterations could possibly require the overall rating of the ID be reduced to the minimum required within the state, a class NC 9S. In other words, assuming a town or county does not make appropriate arrangements to offset the effects of the fire department closure, then homeowners' rate for that district would most likely go up, unquote. According to the action plan submitted to the state by Wesley Chapel Volunteer Fire Department, the Hemby Road location will be losing apparatus. I was going to ask Mr. Summy and Mr. Hill, how does the apparatus required for a substation affect the level of service as compared to our current level of service, specifically the loss of equipment and apparatus being spread over an entire district? One way that I do know that it will affect is that once the equipment and apparatus have left the building at Hemby Road, that is owned by Providence Volunteer Fire Dept, then Wesley Chapel will be forced to spread their equipment and their apparatus onto another 10 square miles and into another station. At that point, the fire survey that would be required by the Department of Insurance would include some proof of a water haul. In other words, when Providence had their inspection